Hi guys! So I thought I'd do a video on the rules and the law of wild camping in the UK, and I've come up with my top 10 tips just to try and help other people. Maybe you're a beginner who's just getting into wild camping, or maybe you're coming from abroad and you fancy giving wild camping in the UK a go and you just want to know what the situation is. So I hope you find this video useful and interesting, and if you do like it, please subscribe and hit the like button and the notification button, because they all really help my channel grow and I really appreciate it. So thank you very much and enjoy. Okay, so number one, what are the rules of wild camping? So here in the UK we have a set of rules which we call leave no trace. So obviously that means taking your rubbish home with you, but it also means pitching late and leaving early. So by that we mean pitching maybe an hour before sunset and leaving maybe an hour after sunrise, and that's generally a good rule to work to. It also means being very discreet, so making sure that you're camping out of view of houses and roads for sure. Try and camp out of view of footpaths. Definitely don't camp on a footpath. Make sure that you're not obstructing anybody. Okay, so number two is bothy rules. So a bothy, in case you're not aware, is a house. Generally it's in a very remote part of the country and is usually looked after by charitable organisations such as the Mountain Bothies Association. They are free to use. They're very basic. They don't usually have electric or running water, and you're quite lucky if you get a toilet and a wood burning stove. So they are free to use and you can just turn up whenever you want to use these places. But again, there are some generally accepted rules when you want to stay in a bothy. So leave no trace rules apply. The only difference really is around leaving food and other useful items in a bothy. So if you're leaving food, make sure that it can't be eaten by any mice or rats or anything like that. So, don't leave, a loaf of bread or a bag of rice or anything along those lines. Tinned goods generally is, the way forward. And you can also leave things that are going to be useful for the next person. So things like candles and torches are acceptable. Leaving your rubbish still isn't acceptable. And firewood. So the general custom is that you replace whatever you use. So number three, where is it legal to actually wild camp in the UK? It is legal in most of Scotland. There's a few small areas such as around Loch Lomond where you need a permit, but on the whole you can camp anywhere in Scotland as long as you follow the Scottish Access Code. You can also wild camp legally on most of Dartmoor. However, do check the map because there are places that you can't camp, and there are also large areas of Dartmoor that are owned by the army and are used as firing ranges. So it's really important that you check the government website to make sure of the firing times for those areas. Number four, tolerated areas. So there are a couple of areas where it's tolerated, it's still not legal. So you can camp in the Lake District as long as you're above the highest fell wall. And apparently if you go to the Brecon Beacons and you go to the visitor centre, they will give you a list of landowners who actually allow wild camping on their land. I've not tried that, but I've heard that that is the case. So please do put a comment if you've tried that and whether or not you were successful in getting a list. So number five, low tolerance areas. So unfortunately, because of overuse, particularly during lockdown, there are a couple of places like the Peak District where there is a very low tolerance, and there are a lot of reports of people actually being kicked off certain places in the Peak District for wild camping, and I've heard that New Forest as well is very similar. And I think those two areas in particular have been hardest hit because they are so close to large major cities, that during lockdown people just swarmed to those areas and didn't respect and appreciate them. So unfortunately, park rangers, landowners, police, fire brigades have really clamped down in those areas. There were a lot of wildfires, particularly I know in the Peak District as well. So number 6, the law. So trespass is a civil offence, which means that the police won't prosecute you for trespass in the UK. However, the landowner can prosecute you. It's unlikely though, unless you happen to be squatting on the land or having a rave or something along those lines, it's highly unlikely that the landowner will prosecute you for trespassing. Criminal damage. So if you are having a fire, if you're cutting down trees, things like that, that's a criminal offence. Litter dropping is also a criminal offence. And public nuisance. So if you are causing a disturbance to other members of the public, then you can be prosecuted for causing a public nuisance. There are also some areas, and I know the Peak District is one of those areas, where there is a public spaces protection order in place, meaning that you can't have a fire, a barbecue, or even a stove, or even technically a lighter, anything with a naked flame. I don't think anyone's going to prosecute you for having a lighter, but it is worth being aware that they have really clamped down in the Peak District because of so many wildfires and people, just being very disrespectful to the area, and particularly disposable barbecues are a real problem. And I just wanted to mention as well health and safety. So this is quite an important point, one that you might be interested in, as I was. The Health and Safety at Work Act means that the landowner or their representative can't put your health and safety at risk when they are doing their job. So that means if you are disturbed by the landowner or their representative going about their business and they ask you to leave in the middle of the night, perhaps you've had a few drinks, perhaps it's not going to be very safe for you to try and get back to your car, you can make them aware of the fact that it would be putting your safety at risk, that you will leave first thing in the morning. So number 7, if you are planning to go camping, there's a few things that you can do that will make sure that you are sticking within the rules and the law in the UK. So making sure that the land that you're going to be walking through and camping on is accessible and that you're not going to be trespassing. Checking who owns the land. So is it National Trust, is it privately owned? Will give you some idea as to the level of enforcement in that particular area. You can hopefully see on OS Maps and Google Maps whether your intended campsite is going to be in view of roads and buildings or paths. You need to plan your arrival time so that you're not getting there, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and then pitching your tent because you've got nothing else better to do, or getting there after sunset and it's dark and you're trying to pitch your tent. So Google and Google Maps can be quite useful. If there's lots of photos of your intended campsite, it means it's a very popular place and you're likely to be disturbed, and it's probably not the best place to go. So going places where there are few photographs, if any, is probably the best place. Check and see if there's any events on. So I heard one report of somebody who'd gone for a wild camp and they woke up in the morning and there were literally hundreds of people running past their tent because there was a race on, a fell running race. Not what you want. So you might want to check that. Doing a quick recce of your site can be really helpful, just to make sure, for example, that you really can't be seen from a road or a building, for example. Number 8, gear. So having a tent that's a nice discreet colour is a good idea. So a nice green or brown like this, something that's going to blend into your natural environment. The only time when that changes is generally if you're going to be, for example, going up a mountain in very snowy conditions, in which case it's much better to have a bright orange or bright red tent that's going to stand out if ever you did need rescuing. But otherwise, for most camping, you want a nice green or brown coloured tent. Okay, so number 9, fires. So as I mentioned, criminal damage, also arson, is an offence in the UK, very serious offence. So it is not acceptable to have a fire on the whole. Certainly not in summer, there's just no need. And definitely not out on open moorland where there is a very high fire risk. If you're going to have a fire, generally do it in the winter when everything's soaking wet and cold and frozen, and do it in the woods where things are much less likely to catch fire compared with dry grass and bracken. Even in the winter, bracken and grass, things like that, heather, can catch fire really, really easily. In terms of being discreet as well when you're having a fire, use dry wood. Wet wood, it smokes a lot more, so you're going to draw attention to yourself. If you are going to have a fire, it's recommended to have it off ground, so you can get these quite cool sort of collapsible fire basket pit things. You can get them on the internet. It looks a little bit like a tripod with a sort of like a mesh basket. I'll get a picture instead of like waving my hands around like that. And if you are going to have a fire, then make sure you leave no trace, cover it back up. So generally a good thing to do before you have your fire is clear away all the earth and a bit of dirt, make a little bit of a shallow bowl for your fire to sit in, which will help to stop the spread. It will help to stop other things around it burning, but it also means that you can cover it back up much easier. And number 10, if you are disturbed, here's what to do. So first of all, know who is it? Is it the landowner or their representative, or is it the police or similar? Or is it just a member of the public? If it's a member of the public, don't worry about it. Just be polite. Maybe just tell them to go away and mind their own business. If it's the landowner or the representative, then be polite and very apologetic. Inform them of your leave no trace principles and that you intend to be gone at first light, and they'll never know that you were there, and you're not going to have a fire, and you'll look after the place. And even if you offer to do a litter pick for them, or offer them a cup of tea if you've got one, try and make friends with them, is generally a good idea. If they do ask you to leave, one of the things you can do, and I have done this successfully, is make them aware that actually it wouldn't be very safe for you to leave in the middle of the night. So when I was disturbed while camping, it was probably about 11 o'clock at night. It was the landowner's representative. To be fair, I was having a fire. It was winter, I was in a forest, everything was soaking wet. There was no chance anything was going to burn, but they weren't happy I was having a fire, which is absolutely fair enough. He did ask me to leave, and I said that I'd had a few drinks and that it wouldn't be very safe for me to, try and get back to my car at this time. And I was very, very apologetic and polite, and of course said that I'd put my fire out, and did so as he was there, and said that I'd be gone at first light, and fortunately they did let me stay. And I've heard other stories where people befriend the landowner or their representative, and as long as you're nice, generally you're not going to get too much of a problem. You're much more likely to get a problem if you give them aggro. They're just there doing their job, and most of them don't mind true wild campers. They're trying to get rid of the fly campers. So fly campers, if you don't know what a fly camper is, they're the ones that come along and leave all their mess, like fly tipping. Bonus tip, don't be a dick. So I hope you found that useful, and if you like it, please do subscribe and comment and like and hit the notification button and all those things. Thank you. Please leave no trace. Leave no trace. But you perhaps have had a few beers, perhaps it's very dark, perhaps it's going to be quite dangerous for you to actually leave. Thanks, Ina. Yeah, you got it. You got it. You got it again. In which case, do get a bright orange or bright red tent. But really, that's where those tents should be left, on a mountain. Don't, no, that's the wrong way of putting that. Don't leave the tent on the mountain. Take it home with you.